listeners, welcome to Kyle and this week Maureen's Cult Cinema Cast. I'm Kyle.
And I'm Maureen.
Yeah. Why don't you introduce yourself a little bit since they don't really know you too much yet?
Well, Kyle, I'm a young adult writer of not great renown here in Southeast Saskatchewan. I've written a series of hockey books, female hockey books, which was published about 10 years ago by Cotto Books out of Regina. They went bankrupt, and I have relaunched my series through Wood Dragon Books, updated the books, put new covers on them, and they look pretty shiny and great. And I explore some teen issues in these books, like bullying, binge drinking, and relationships.
Yeah, they're cool. Yeah, they're quite nice. I know the covers definitely look very nice.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, I thought they looked really nice. I think the third one is the most recent release. So
Yeah, Breakaway just came out in December. I think December 20th.
okay,
So
yeah.
it's pretty exciting to have all three of them rebooted within the same year.
So yeah, go check out Maureen's books. We'll get a little bit more info on that stuff toward the end, but this week, I've brought her on as the guest host this week to touch on our sub-theme of the season, the worst movies to win the Academy Award for Best Picture. And this week, we are doing the film Gladiator from 2000, directed by Ridley Scott, and Academy Award winner for Best Lead Actor, Academy Award for Best Picture, an Academy Award for Best Sound Mixing. So those are three Oscars, which is pretty normal for the Best Picture. They usually get a few.
I think they might have got one for costuming too.
They could have been nominated. It got costume. Oh yeah, it also won Best Costume Design. It only gave me a 4. So Best Sound, Best Visual Effects, Best Costume Design, Best Director, and Best Picture. And then nominated for Best Director, Best Supporting Actor, Best Original Screenplay, Best Art Direction, Best Cinematography, Best Original Score, and Best Film Editing. I strongly disagree with editing and original screenplay. Those are my biggest objections, really.
You think it should have got those?
No, I don't think they should have. I object to the fact that's my whole premise for this. We were originally going to do something else, but I'm glad you I offered you a chance to choose something else, and I'm glad you picked this because this is really given me an entirely different opinion of the Academy. Because I actually find the script to be incredibly basic, just immensely for a organization which has this reputation being very much anti genre filmmaking. And then they give this thing best think this is a great screenplay. It's I can get this quality of writing from any schlocky fantasy novel.
Well, it was interesting that this was the first time in 50 years that a film won Best Picture that didn't win a screenwriting or directing Oscar as well. Usually those goes hand in hand.
Yeah, no. Ridley Scott didn't win Best Director either. Let's see what it beat real quick.
What it beat? I can tell you a couple of them.
All right, I'll get the full list if you want.
It beat. I don't know if I can remember, but it beat Traffic, which my husband and I were just watching. It just happened to come on last night, so we watched about the last few minutes of it. I had seen it years ago. It beat Aaron Brockovich.
Yeah.
Chocolat.
Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
Yeah. So some pretty good movies.
It lost. So the Traffic guy did win Best Director. Oh, this beat out Tom Hanks for Castaway for Best Actor.
No way. Really?
Yeah. Yeah, no, Tom Hanks has a nomination for Best Actor this year, and Russell Crowe beat him, which is weird because I don't actually think like I heard so much about like the performances in this, and I was just like, okay, that's these seem pretty normal.
Mm.
I know
Hmm.
Joaquin Phoenix lost to another guy from Traffic, uh Benicio del Toro.
Del
Um
Toro? Yeah.
so I kind of see where they're coming from for Joaquin Phoenix, but I mean, my big thing there is like first of all, this entire plot is like not historically accurate at all. Basically, like the large points of this picture never happened. It is most similar to the movie takes place in 180, though I could easily say it takes place over the course of a couple of years if we really wanted to, potentially. But it takes place in 180. The events of the film bear the greatest resemblance to the conspiracies of 182, which were like conspiracies by members of the Senate, and also Lucilla, she's a character in this. She was also a real life contributor to those, but those of that conspiracy turned out pretty much the mirror opposite of what happens in that movie. That conspiracy failed, and like the senators involved were killed, and Lucilla wasn't killed, but she died like a few years later after being exiled. As for the screenplay, like, and then also there's I brought this up at talking about Joaquin Phoenix's performance as Commodus. Commodus, historically speaking, probably didn't act like this. Like it treats him as very much a over civilized like city kid, which isn't entirely accurate. In the movie toward the end when he gets into the arena and he's like fighting, you're meant to like, oh, he's not supposed to be very good at fighting, and I'm like, historically he was probably pretty reasonable. He had like military ranks, and by all accounts he was quite athletic, of course, from his real life instances of participating in gladiatorial combat. Rigged combat, of course, but he was
Right.
pretty well physically fit. He was really more of a frat boy or like a trust fund brat, if that makes sense. So like, yeah, it'd be more like if like a rich kid was like participating in the Super Bowl or WrestleMania would be more accurate. So he's got some training, if nothing else, and he's just not like why he was such a bad emperor was more because he wasn't like interested in running the kingdom so much. And it also like the historical precedent to like what happens in this movie is so different from what was going on in real life that like what the things like the character who's playing Marcus Aurelius in this would be like very contradictory to what was happening in real life. Yeah, it's just and that just causes it to like not ring very true. And I very much find like Russell Crowe's character Maximus, who is a very much entirely fictional character. He's very loosely based on this character Narcissus, who was the guy who is suspected of killing Commodus way in like 192 when and he was essentially Commodus's personal trainer, more or less, and he was convinced to kill Commodus, and that's how Commodus died at something like 31. That was another thing. This Commodus was like emperor, like sole emperor of the Roman Empire by the time when he was 18. So that's another thing. He's the most powerful kid on earth when he's very, very young. and he was also serving as co-emperor for 4 years before this. Because I guess I'll get into that a bit more. But he was actually already emperor by the time this movie would have taken place, and like he would have him like the conflict of the movie would have been much more controversial than it is done in the movie, because it would have required like essentially deposing him instead of like denying him his title. And I just find that's, and like once you get down to this, that like it's a totally like fictional story and then there's nothing attaching it to reality, you ironically do have to like weigh it on its own merits, because you've essentially made like a very fictional narrative that can't fall back on the fact that like, hey, this is the story of what really happened. So you got to judge on that, and when you get to that, it's very much like Russell Crowe, Gary Stu, who wins at everything except for the one time he has to lose for the plot, and he's just like so cool, you guys, and beats everyone in all the fights because he's so powerful and manly, and it's dime a dozen stuff in the fantasy genre
Mm.
when you get down to it. Yeah, and that's where I've come. That's the conclusion I've come to.
Well, it's interesting that when they were writing this screenplay, they started, as you said, with Narcissus, and you can almost see how that unraveled with, oh, what if instead of he was a, and they follow down that path of just reconstructing it the way that they think would have made a better story.
Yeah, and yeah, and what I think they've ended up with is just like something that like you find in all the time in fantasy genres, and like those movies don't win Best Picture. Like we don't get Best Picture to James Bond movies or anything. That's
No, no.
no, that's ultimately where I'm at with this. But yeah, I think that's enough preamble. I think we'll get into the plot. So yeah, movie starts in 180 Anno Dominico, I think is the Latin for that. This is why we call it Common Era nowadays, folks. It's way too complicated. We open the film to like a shot of like Russell Crowe running his hand through a field. He's thinking of his home back in Spain, I guess, where his home is. Yeah, so they're in Germania fighting war to uh yeah, that's actually forgot to mention. Yeah. Yeah, he's running his hand through a field, and like then he stares at the camera for no reason, adding 2 minutes to the movie for some ungodly reason. The movie's 2.5 hours long. We don't need that doesn't need to be there. I don't know. They have these weird dream sequences through the whole movie about him viewing home, and it's not all terribly necessary, really.
Actually, Kyle, though, that's one of the parts I actually liked was the dream sequences. So I'll disagree with you there, but continue.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah. They're very surreal and whatnot. So they're in Germania fighting against German tribes who are trying to get their land back, basically is the short of it. Uh yeah, it's a border conflict with yeah, it's standard border conflict between Rome and the so-called barbarian tribes outside Rome. I don't actually have a lot of respect for Rome, so that's kind of something we're gonna have to deal with. If you're, that's a bit weird for like a history major such as myself, but I don't have like like it's intellectually stimulating history. I don't like it's not my job to glorify it. You don't expect to spawn astronomers to talk about how cool the asteroid that killed the dinosaurs was. To be fair, it's something you have to study. It's not like something you have to like be okay with. And yeah, it's very much a constant conflict. Playing at expanding the empire, which at this point hasn't expanded for I think a generation in real life. Although Marcus Aurelius later makes a point of saying that he built the empire and that he's expanded, which is just something the movie made up. So we're introduced, yeah, and we're getting a glimpse of who Russell Crowe's character Maximus is. He is a general in the Roman army, and he's overseeing his men who are very loyal to him. And he is honestly, probably I don't find him terribly successful militarily. He's like every battle he's in ends up with like half casualties, except for like the one in the middle of the movie. Lots of people, lots of Romans die in this battle, which is a bit more accurate for this era of Roman history, which is we're just on like the cusp of its down, like the end of the Roman golden age, which is or the imperial golden age, I should say, which is brought to an end by ironically Commodus, who's going to be coming here soon. So he goes to we get a fight after the guy sent to negotiate with the Germans returns all headless and stuff. I don't buy this terribly, and even then I don't that's the thing, I don't really like think of the Romans as this like great force for good. Like good stuff happened under them, but I don't think they're like the grand like heroes of history that like a lot of much older historians treat them as such. It's easy to feel that way, what with like how like some of the later Christian emperors would go after some of the grand scientific and intellectual experiments that the currently pagan Romans would be famous for. But I mean, the Romans aren't good guys. They're a bunch. They enslave people. They conquer lands and steal stuff. They're really not great people. They didn't like. I don't get this almost like fetishistic way that a lot of people look at Rome. Like, oh yeah, we're the next Rome because Rome was so great. I mean, they're the bad guys in any other story. Like you could easily tell a story about like how the Romans are bastards and that they need to be stopped. I mean, shit, they were the guys that put Jesus on the cross, and they did that not because they wanted him to. They didn't want him like getting a bunch of people behind him and like questioning their power. They weren't good people. They were tyrants at the end of the day. And despite this movie's like insistence upon the Roman Republic being the better version of Rome, not really. I mean, again, the guys that put Jesus on the cross were Republican Romans. That was before there was an emperor, I'm pretty sure.
I think that was under Augustus actually,
Maybe
or
let's
perhaps
see.
Tiberius. I think actually he was born.
Oh yeah, no, it's I'm wrong. Julius Caesar was just like died in 44 BC. So yeah, I'm wrong, but still my point stands. The Roman republics were also conquerors, and a lot of those guys were generals before Julius Caesar was a emperor. He was still a general who was famous for like invading places and stuff. Well, they weren't good guys at any point, and it's weird that it's a little nonsense that they claim this movie tries to claim otherwise in spots. Yeah, so they end up having the fight. We get to this movie does a good job of like showing off all the fancy Roman war equipment. Lots of Roman shields. They got ballistas and catapults and all this stuff, and fire arrows, which are not a thing. At least not the way every movie tries to portray them. Fire arrows are like they did exist. Sun Tzu used them quite a fair bit, but he uses them to like start grass fires and stuff,
Right.
like to control the terrain or like to because like other like at this point especially like you're firing arrow like an arrow that would be on fire, it would lose fire, but it would still be smoking and you can start a fire with it. But yeah, it's not a thing you'd be firing at the enemy en masse as much. You're better off just firing arrows. But yeah, like a lot of this still isn't historically accurate really, but we do get to see a bunch of the fancy Roman stuff, which is always nice because we don't it's difficult. We don't really get to see it much nowadays. Like even the stuff that's like still around of Rome, where's like its ruins and like stuff that's been like stripped for parts and whatnot. Like you can go to the Roman Colosseum that's featured in this movie, and it's like a very not like its former self, and like because like a lot of like the outer parts of it were like stripped to build the Vatican and whatnot. So it's nice seeing like Rome in all its glory. It's something you don't get to see, and I think that's a big part of the value of historical movies is to get to
Mm.
see what stuff looked like back in the day. And this movie, I think, does a good job of it. It's in some places it's not to the dot, and other points it's like actually like played down in points. Some of the gladiatorial matches we get later in the thing are like very much unorganized and don't wouldn't fit the standards of the time. A lot of the fights are like between just like random people and like a bit more lethal than they would have been in real life, maybe. I mean, absolutely, these things are lethal because it's like swords and whatnot, but you could go through them and like you'd get spared. A lot of gladiators were like this isn't a flattering analogy, obviously, but a lot treated a lot like a racehorse, where like it's a
Mm.
finely raised animal that's treated with the utmost care and like
Like a bucking horse,
yeah, or like yeah,
right? You want them
also
to
race.
perform well, so
Yeah, you take very good care of them. You keep them bathed and healthy. You'd actually probably have like a lot of medics taking good looks, like looking after them to the best of their abilities to like save them from infection as best they could. Which, I mean, it's the second century, so the medical technology isn't so great, but it's not nothing. It's they're a bit more resourceful than we give them credit for. So yeah, they have the fight with the big war between the Germanic peoples and the Roman army, which is pretty good. I don't. One thing I really hate. It's probably my least favorite making technique. Did you notice like when you were watching this, where one point at some points where like the film would like come to like stuttering
oh
at all?
really? I
Yeah, did you?
you mean during the battle sequences?
Yeah, especially during like some of the hand to hand fights, where they're with the like sword to sword fights rather.
You know what? I didn't really think of that, but now that you mention it, yeah, I did notice that.
Yeah, I've seen it like in a few other movies. One of the opening fight scenes in Captain America: Civil War, where Captain America's fighting what's his name? I forget his name, but he's fighting this other guy, and it looks really choppy. Like they're cutting at, like you're maybe like skipping out on a third of the frames the picture's taking. Since I saw it in this movie, I finally had an excuse to like Google why that is. It's apparently an effect caused by a 45-degree camera shutter, which is a part of the camera. Normally it's closer to 180 degrees or 90 degrees. I can't remember, but it's angled so that you get more of a stop motion effect, which looks really bad when like you're doing like a hand-to-hand sword fight or like a fist fight, which filmmakers insist on using it for. But where it looks really good, and this speaks to where it was popularized in the movie Saving Private Ryan, it makes explosions look really good.
Oh.
Yeah, because you can use your 45-degree shutter camera equipped like that, and like you set off a practical explosion, and like you'll see like bits of the shrapnel moving through the frame, so it makes like a explosion look really good, or like a tank look really good because it's like moving in like this stuttering motion. But for some reason, some filmmakers like to put it in man-to-man fights, which benefit from you seeing everything they do and like having like fluid motion. So if anything, they should be going to like a higher frame rate, or like doing like a, dare I say, 60 frames per second, like in a video game, and then you see every bit of movement in in the fight. So it just makes fluid normal people movement look like just your stop motion, which I think looks really bad and makes me like honestly a little disoriented when they put it on screen. I always end up trying to like fix my television every time I see it. And yeah, so screw that. And well, I just cannot stand it as a technique. The fight scenes are also like littered with like very quick cuts. Like every time, like every half second, there's a new shot. That's again very disorienting, and you don't get to see the full detail of the combat. It might, I guess it looks okay, but like it sure look better if we were just getting like a proper fight. Wouldn't it?
Mm. I guess there was too much going on. It makes me wonder about the
Oh yeah.
choreography of that.
Yeah. I don't know if it's to like cover up for less than stellar choreography, or to cover up for worse fight scene, or like worse fight scenes, but it seems like it's lazy filmmaking. I don't really care for it. And like the later scenes, and you can tell because like the later fight scenes in the movie look a lot better. And I think that also matches out because like the gladiatorial fights were filmed last, so
Oh.
that might have been like a, I think anyway, and that might have been like a sign that like they were watching the dailies from the fight scene from the German fight, and then just adjusting to use less of those filmmaking techniques in the later fight scenes.
Hmm.
Because like when you get to the fight scene at the end between Maximus and Commodus, it's like single cuts and you get to see everything. So yeah,
Yes. But then they're the only two, right? So
yeah,
they might have just been overthinking it.
could be. So yeah, they win the fight, and we're introduced to Marcus Aurelius, who is the current emperor of Rome, who is Commodus's father, and ironically, in real life, the reinstitutor of the patrilineal succession of emperors, which is something they start instituting again, which may seem weird, especially when compared to this movie where Marcus Aurelius is just like, yeah, democracy. Let's bring in more democracy. We're gonna bring the Senate back, and that's his entire goal for the beginning. He's praising Maximus as Commodus arrives toward the front. He's been called by Marcus Aurelius to have a meeting before they head back to Rome to do some political reform. now that the German tribes have been defeated, which didn't happen in real life. In real life, Commodus would, after the death of Marcus Aurelius, like draw peace treaties with I think the Nubian peoples, though that might be wrong. He drew up a peace treaty with the people they're fighting here, and that would actually lead to like a sort of peaceful period of Roman history for like 12 years or 11 years, however you want to count it. Because like they weren't doing like military war. There was obviously like a ton of political strife, but so yeah, Maximus is trying to get Marcus Aurelius to send him home now that the war is over, sort of, and he's agreeing, but wants to talk to Maximus later. This is intercut with like shots of Commodus, who's just being an obvious bad guy from a fantasy novel. I don't. Again, it's not true to like Commodus in real life, who was still an objectively evil person who's bad because he's the leader of Rome, which is bad. Rome is bad.
But
uh,
at least the movie tries to give him motivation, although it seems pretty campy. Dad didn't love me, therefore, this is why I am the person that I am.
yeah, and it's really weird because, like, I mean, also in real life, Commodus would have been on the front the whole time. That was a big
Yes.
point of, yeah, that was a big point of like making Commodus co-emperor in I think 176 is so that he could get a handle on military training, and that involved him fighting on the front. And he actually had a good bit of military rank by the time he would become sole emperor.
So he was maybe closer to Maximus than the fictional Maximus.
Yeah, yeah, a bit more cuz yeah, he would have been I don't know if he was a general for sure. He was definitely a legate. But I don't know my Roman ranks too well. I'm not a military
No.
historian, obviously. In this, he's been in Rome the whole time,
Yes.
which is different. But yeah, he's a bit. Yeah, in real life, he would have been a bit more of a in a bit more of a similar role to Maximus as he's portrayed in here. Yeah, the motivations between this fictional Commodus and the real Commodus are just so arbitrarily different. So I can't go too much on that because like I've come to the piece of like this is a fictional story. It's not real. So
No.
um
But
no.
he's the only character. Oh, maybe I'm wrong about this, but he's the only character in the movie that seems to be thoroughly evil. I mean, everyone else has kind of got, they're fairly well-rounded characters, interesting characters, but he is just so obviously evil, like to the core. And it would have been more interesting if he had been even somewhat sympathetic, but that was not to be.
And the thing that actually would makes me somewhat sympathetic to his character in this is because so in the movie we're gonna have there ends up being like a brief conversation between Maximus and Marcus Aurelius that says, "Hey Maximus, I'm going to make you the protector of Rome," which is essentially 50% of the emperor's job, more or less.
Right.
Yeah, there's political stuff behind that, but that's a big part of it. I won't bore you with the details, but he's going to make
Thank you.
Maximus protector of Rome, while the Senate starts to take over again, and also Maximus is going to like do some bits to like weed out the corruption in presumably Roman bureaucracy, and then after this we'll get a scene. Maximus initially refuses, So, but he's going to end up agreeing to it. But then Marcus Aurelius has a meeting with Commodus, where Marcus Aurelius lays out his plan to Commodus, and Commodus reacts badly and ends up murdering Marcus Aurelius so that he can be emperor and to put a kibosh on Marcus Aurelius re republicanizing Rome. What makes me sympathetic to Commodus in this is like when you look at Roman history, the Senate is not a uncorrupt organization. The entire Rome would have collapsed long ago if not for the power of the centralizing power of the emperor. Like there was constant civil war. There were several civil wars before Julius Caesar became Caesar, and him taking power led to a stabilization of Rome. So it's not as if the Senate's this wholly democratic organization that's free of corruption. No, they're just as corrupt as any of the emperors. And I'm not saying the emperors aren't corrupt. They're just merely the more stable figures in terms of Roman history. I'm not opposed to Rome collapsing in, say, like 50 AD, but if you want Rome to be together, if you want Rome to stay as it is, the emperors needed to be a thing, especially at the size it was at. Like the Rome is like Rome, especially at this point, is a quarter of the human population. It's totally unwieldy, and without that central figure, it's gonna end up collapsing or like breaking up, which it eventually does. Because I mean, the entire operation's a big inherently going to collapse as soon as like someone's not willing to put a sword to the guy who wants his own fair shake. But yeah, it's not an unreasonable assumption on Commodus's part that bringing back the Senate would be bad for Roman unity. That kind of makes him a little bit sympathetic in my eyes. Obviously, I prefer people to get their freedom back to a degree, but yeah.
Well, in that time, if it wasn't the Romans, it probably would have been somebody else. I'm not saying that that means it was a good thing it was the Romans. It's just it was kind of a dog eat. It was kind of a dog eat dog kind of world.
Especially for like when you're trying to maintain a nation of this size, you got to do certain things. Like my argument at the end of the day is like you probably don't get to have a nation this size, and that's not like I freely acknowledge that is not comforting to some people.
No.
But yeah, no. So Commodus has a point. Is my point. So Commodus kills Marcus Aurelius, and he uses this as an opportunity to like make himself emperor. He calls on Maximus and tells him and asks for his loyalty, but Maximus knows what's up. So Maximus tries to flee the army camp so that he can go to Rome to warn the Senate and like let them know what Marcus Aurelius's plan was. But he is apprehended by another general and is going to be put to death, essentially, in the backwoods, not officially. But Maximus attempts to escape and manages to escape, killing the people he's in. But he is gravely wounded. He tries to go back to his home in Spain, but returns to it to find that his wife and child have been murdered, like very graphically. They are set on fire and crucified. as Romans do. This, yeah.
Yeah, pretty gruesome. And of course, it gives him motivation, right? Later on, when he's in the ring, he's got kind of a bit of a death wish, I think.
In the meantime, he ends up collapsing of his wounds and is collected by a couple slavers who
Hmm.
take him away. Before we move on with that, I'll just bring up in the meantime, there's been the character of Lucilla, who is Commodus's older sister. She actually has a bit of rank. She has, I know at least in real life, she has her late husband's rank of Augusta, which means she has some amount of political power. She is going along with Commodus's plan because essentially to protect her son, because her son is as of yet, at least within the logic of movie, I don't know about real life, but she is the son Lucian is the current heir to the Empire of Rome, as it sits.
Right. Even though historically he was dead by this point, and she was remarried.
That does allow. I think she is allowed to maintain some of her rank though, but
Hmm.
and like again, I said at the beginning, she was involved in the 182 conspiracy to kill Commodus, and her goal plan through this is to make sure that she stays safe and her son stays safe because her son being the heir is pretty like like there's advantages for Commodus and disadvantages. Having Commodus there allows for, or like Lucian there allows for some sign of stability. It could be why some of the senators are actually willing to side with Lucilla later in the movie. Her son being around is a bit of a stabilizing factor because then they don't have to deal with the whole thing of like choosing a new emperor when none is currently uh, able to succeed him, which yeah, that does turn out to be a big problem a little bit later in history. After
Hmm.
Commodus dies, there's a famous historical event called the Year of the Five Emperors. And that's not because they all died of strokes within 1 year. At least not all of them. Some of them might have. I need to brush up on that.
So not quite the era of democracy and the return to the republic that they leave you to think at the end of the movie.
Yeah, no, at the end of the movie, they bring a whole thing about, oh, there's going to be a new Roman Republic, which no, there wasn't.
Yeah.
It ended up just being like passed around through various Roman generals for the next several years. And yeah, again, five emperors in 1 year, right after Commodus dies in 92. So 93, I think, is the year of five emperors. But yeah, on the other hand, like leaving Lucian, if Commodus were to kill Lucian, that would mean that people can't kill him and just have Lucian take over. Because having a 10-year-old emperor isn't above monarchies. So
Yeah.
so she decided to side with Commodus to or like at least give lip service to Commodus's rule so that she can maintain some safety. Anyway, back to Maximus. He regains consciousness on in a slave caravan with his one of his friends for the rest of the movie, a African hunter by the name of Juba, played by
Hmm.
Jimon Hounsou. Sansao. Sorry if I'm pronouncing that not great. So he is essentially um, treated Maximus's wound from that he received during his escape attempt, and we find out that he is being he has been enslaved by North African traders, and he is in the Zuchabar province in modern day
Yeah,
Algeria.
where is? Oh.
Yeah. So that's the thing. He was snatched from Spain and then brought to the middle of northern Africa, more or less. That's where Algeria is. It's like the middle point of
Hmm.
northern Africa. So they brought him hundreds of miles across the ocean, across the Mediterranean Sea. Yeah, I don't know how this works. This is granted, it can happen.
Hmm.
Like there's trade routes between these parts of Rome, absolutely. So him getting captured and then being brought to North Africa isn't the weirdest part. It's almost weirder that he's unconscious this entire time. Like he's clearly had some sort of infection, which is being treated by Juba, which okay, that can happen. And he's just been unconscious for probably a month. Let's be honest. He's that's really bad for like antique for the classic, not the classical period, the Roman period. Yeah, that's ludicrous. Not the actor. I think I was just like I just like looked up for I looked it up and I was just like, what? What had this happen? That's a not this is nonsense anyway. So he's bought by this man called Proximo,
Yeah.
who played by Oliver Reed, who actually passed away midway through production. Yeah, so he's actually replaced by like a digital double in some parts. I think they do okay with it. It's not very it's not terribly noticeable.
Yeah, I didn't know it till after I'd watched the movie, and now I guess I need to go back and look at those scenes again.
I think I can tell which ones, but it's definitely yeah, I don't know how much obviously I don't know at what point in production he died, so I don't know how much they have and how many scenes there actually are, but I think I recognized a few of them. So Proximo was this former gladiator who was freed, probably as a form of retirement, which was kind of common for gladiators. That would happen if like you were popular and you reached a certain age, they'd give you your freedom. And Marcus Aurelius allegedly did this. Yeah, that makes sense. He's got a backstory. So he ends up buying Maximus and the other guys inside the slave caravan he's on. The he has been bought so that they can do some fighting, some gladiatorial fighting in this backwoods gladiatorial arena. Which yeah, those were around. There were plenty of those. It's pretty
Right.
gladiators were pretty popular in the Roman Empire up until obviously the Christianization of the Roman Empire, where they put the kibosh on that. Probably because the Christians had been just a few short years ago the entertainment in the gladiatorial arena, so can hardly blame them for wanting to put a kibosh on the whole thing. So they get brought into a gladiatorial fight, which Maximus is initially a little like hesitant to do, but he gets in, but he agrees to fight because like Proximo says, as soon as you get in there, you'll realize you have to do it. Which, yeah, that's how slavery works. Maximus does some fighting, and he manages actually to get most of his unit of slaves through the fight, which is made up of like a bunch of like guys in fancy looking helmets, which pretty somewhat accurate, somewhat not. There's actually like a lot more uniformity to gladiators than what's presented in this movie. So there's that. I think there's a guy in like a pig helmet, which I don't know. There's arguments to be made about how realistic all that is. But I think I'm more or less in favor of in favor of it because again it gets the point across.
Didn't didn't you kind of feel though like the guy that came out with the scythe helmet was always gonna buy the farm in the end? Well, I guess they all do because Maximus is in the ring, but um, he's always supposed to look like the big. Do you know what I mean by the scythe helmet? It's kind of
Yeah.
one of the bigger helmets. Yeah. Anyway, he always seems to not make it.
Yeah, I imagine they reuse a bunch of the Gladiator armor too after one guy dies. It's as
Mm-hmm.
much as you can reuse armor, I think, because like it's fitted most of the time. Not so much this stuff, but yeah. Yeah, we cut back to after they win this brief initial fight. We cut back to Commodus, who's having a meeting with the senators. Commodus brushes off concerns about a issue with plague, and he decides that in order to gain the favor of the people, so that he can eventually abolish the Senate, he isn't. He is going to hold like 150 days straight of gladiatorial games to make everyone like
Mm-hmm.
him, which somewhat true to life. He had a lot of that. He was infamous for spending like a lot of money on gladiatorial games. One of the sticking points actually between him and the Senate was he partially attempted to pay for this by levying a tax against the senatorial class, kind of explicitly coming after the Senate at that point.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about what Commodus's ideas were toward like abolishing the Senate, but I think this is actually the least one of the less bothersome historical inaccuracies because it's closer to reality. It's like the whole thing in the Bible about like what is the guy's name? Herod killing every baby in the city of Jerusalem or whatever because he wants to get at Jesus. It's not something that strictly happened, but it's in the spirit of the character.
Right.
And yeah, the party obviously the real Commodus's reign, a solo reign as emperor was 12 years long, so a lot of this is condensed. But yeah, he's doing this to please the mob so that he can gain political favor. We cut back to Maximus, who's sort of turned his little gladiatorial team into a bit of a military unit, which is a reasonable course of action if he wants to get through this alive. They start chanting Roman like the same phrases that he was saying to his army earlier in the movie. We then Maximus proceeds to walk out into the gladiatorial arena on his own and kills 6 guys all by himself, and then just shouts that like, "Are you not entertained?" Which is obviously the big iconic line from the movie, but it just drops like a bag of bricks.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was surprised. I thought this would be a bigger deal. Personally, I think the crowd would have been very entertained by this because it's he just like stomped his way through 6 guys. That's probably pretty cool for a gladiator to do. It's yeah, it's weird that they weren't already cheering. It's just a weird line that kind of just drops like a bag of bricks. It's a fun meme though.
So, so did you read that Russell? I don't know if this is one of the ones that Russell Crowe wrote, but it sounded like he came up with a lot of lines in the movie.
I could believe it. Some actors are really good at that. And
Mm-hmm. That there was a lot of re reshaping of the script while they were filming. Anyway, he had good instincts, I guess, for what would work.
oh yeah, he very much exudes action hero energy from this movie. Like his every line is just
Mm-hmm.
like yeah, most of his lines are like incredibly iconic. Um
Unleash hell.
it's almost contributing to like my statement earlier that he's a bit of a like generic fantasy hero because he's just kind of good at everything and he's like way too
Mm-hmm.
cool to be a real
Mm-hmm.
person. But yeah, it's something. Anyway, Proximo calls Maximus to his office. He tells Maximus that they are going to Rome because Commodus is restarting the gladiatorial games, which have apparently been off for 5 years. I don't know how accurate that is, to history. I'm going to move
Yeah,
on.
I don't know about that either.
Again, Marcus Aurelius in real life was not this pure little perfect dream emperor that he is in the movie. Proximo says that, like, hey, if you win the crowd over really well, you might eventually be able to get your freedom, and you might like that, won't you? And Maximus kind of nods and is mostly nodding it because the emperor will end up giving you your freedom, which means he'd get really close to that guy Commodus, who's just
Yeah.
so nice and stable. We cut back to Commodus, who's looking over his nephew like a big creepy person. So yeah, we get a bit of that. Lucian meets Maxim, like goes to like look over the gladiator rings, and him and Maximus meet briefly. Maximus doesn't give up who he is, but it's an interesting thing. Interesting fact that the movie brings up is that Lucian and Maximus's son would be the same age. That's not entirely. There's a certain like thing there when like he looks at that and like, oh, this would be neat. And he also has like a thing for Lucilla. Yeah, they're kind of teasing that. It doesn't.
Yes. They
So
they kind of hint at that, don't they? That they had a relationship, but he wasn't good enough for her or something.
yeah, and that kind of makes sense, especially if like they knew each other before.
Mm-hmm.
Maximus was really big in the army. It'd probably be fine for him to like get like except for the part where he's now a slave and whatnot. But like as a general, it probably would have been fine for him to pursue a relationship with her if like anything had happened to his wife, and now something's happened to his
Mm-hmm.
wife. So yeah, so that's a whole thing. They enter the so Maximus enters the arena with a face helmet that covers his face. He noticeably doesn't salute the emperor. So when all the gladiators have to do that, they are being brought into the arena to reenact the Second Battle of Carthage, which the Carthaginians lost that one. So Proximo's kind of pissed that all his gladiators are going into this pretty one-sided fight.
And the Romans, of course, hated Carthage, right? I mean, I don't know how much they would have in 180. It would been a long time since the Punic Wars, but
Yeah, yeah, there were two Carthaginian.
yeah, I don't even know what you would compare that to now. But
Um,
like everybody hates the Yankees. I don't know.
it would be a bit more like if after World War II, Germany had just like ceased to exist.
Oh yes, yeah. There
Yeah,
you go.
similar situation there, but there aren't Carthaginians around anymore. So,
No,
uh,
no, they pretty much wiped them out.
no, yeah, this is where the phrase "salt the earth" comes from. Is how that ended out. The guys role playing the Roman troops go out in chariots, which is obviously a big advantage for them. And these chariots have like essentially swords sticking out of the spokes or out of the axles. So that's pretty terrifying. Maximus has has his gladiators form a shield wall.
So have you seen Ben-Hur?
No, I mean to. It's a plan.
Yeah, you should. Because Ridley Scott was a big fan, apparently, of Ben-Hur and Spartacus. And so this was his nod at Roman history. And there's a very famous chariot race, of course, in Ben-Hur, where Messala, the villain, has those knives on his chariot wheels and uses them to cut down his opponents. So, I'm not saying that they shouldn't have used it. Maybe it's more of a nod at Ben-Hur and, it's reminiscent of it.
This is also the plot's kind of like a little reminiscent of Spartacus, sort of, because obviously Spartacus was like a gladiator who went on to lead an
Right.
anti-slave revolution. So although
Well,
Spartacus is
and
real.
Yes, yes, yeah. Ben-Hur was a fictional character, but that one too. Maybe he did borrow a little bit from that because Ben-Hur was sent to the galleys by his friend, his supposed Roman friend, Messala, who believed he'd made an attempt on his life, which he hadn't, and ended up, he thought his sister and his mother were dead, and he rose to get the opportunity to fight Masala in the ring, with or to fight to race against him with chariots. So I mean, it's pretty close actually to the plot of Gladiator when I think about it.
So yeah, the Maximus's gladiators who are role playing this Carthaginians form a sealed wall. Most of them anyway. A few of them that are less trained end up staying outside the sealed wall, and eventually manage to topple some chariots and turn things around on the gladiators role playing the Romans, and end up actually winning the fight. Um, which kinda gives Commodus a little chuckle, because obviously it was meant to be one-sided, and this is like a bit of a "reenactment" in quotes, which is, something that happened in gladiatorial matches, real life. They would do that.
Right,
I think they would even like, you could even, the Colosseum is even capable of being flooded so you can mimic medieval battles,
right. That's true.
or
I think
was
that's
anyway.
true.
I don't suppose it's still waterproof, is it?
Probably not.
No, yeah. So yeah, they end up winning the fight, and Commodus wants to meet with this guy who manage to lead these gladiators to victory. Maximus tries to just snub Commodus because he's not ready to reveal his plans yet. He said he turns his back on him. He just tells him his name's Gladiator. But eventually, under pressure, he just takes off his helmet and gives like an awesome action hero speech about how,
Yeah,
yeah, like, I am Maximus, blah 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 blah, father to a murdered son, husband to a murdered wife. I am Maximus, blah blah blah. I will have my vengeance, and it's very iconic. This is the part of the movie where the movie gets good.
don't you think though that this scene is a bit misplaced though because it has so much, it has it's a powerful scene and yet there's another hour of movie. It just to me it felt like it should have come later in the movie, but
Maybe I kind of like it though, because they have to he's really put Commodus in a pickle here, where like Commodus is trying to use these gladiatorial games to like make a show and like make himself look good, and like inadvertently introduced this unfortunate storyline into his games, and he is now put into like this really awkward position where he can't quite straight up kill Commodus, because that would make the crowd upset with him and like push back his plans. So I
right.
think it works pretty good if it's a little bit weird, but yeah, I think it actually works as
Okay.
far as this go. It's obviously it's treading like it's something that could have easily been screwed up, but I think they do pull it off. So yeah, Maximus is getting the crowd to his side. Commodus is pissed. Lucilla has decided to secretly meet with Maximus to start conspiring with him to eventually overthrow Commodus. Commodus's response to Maximus's success is to bring out this undefeated gladiator from the last set of games, who's like a foot taller than Maximus, and like set him against and like pits them against each other. And Maximus
Right.
eventually manages to win that fight after like a glorious little knockout, drag out brawl. Uh, they're also like surrounded by like tigers who are like forming like a bit of a ring for them to fight in. and the tigers are like being held back by people, like just other gladiators. It's a really elaborate and awesome little setup. I don't like the movie, but it is infectious, and I can't deny that.
Well, you know what? It's not. It's entertaining.
It's got an energy to it, and it does take advantage of you after a while. So as the other gladiator lies on the ground, Market Commodus does his like the gladiatorial thumbs down thing, where like he's asking for like the Maximus to put down the other gladiator. This is used a little. This is misconstrued in a lot of gladiatorial meaning, like cinema, because in real life this wasn't used as it is in this. Like I said earlier in the review, gladiatorial matches were often a little less lethal than they're portrayed in this, and like you'd use like this sort of practice to oh, the guy looks like he's in a lot of pain, you better put him down, sort of thing. And it was like giving the guy quote unquote warrior's death in the middle of the arena rather than letting him die in like a hospital bed. And yeah, it'd be a bit more like that, and it was a bit more famously a merciful thing. Obviously, I think Commodus would have used this method to get Maximus killed if he had lost the fight, but the thumbs down symbol is also inaccurate. The confusion is that the thumbs up symbol is the same because essentially people get it wrong because you do a thumbs up to spare the guy, so that people will think like, oh, you must do a thumbs down to get the guy killed. But actually, you do like a downward hand motion to make like your hand like a sword, sort of, and that would be symbolize him dead. Yeah, it's just a little bit of weird historical miscommunication. So yeah, Commodus meets with Maximus again in the middle of the arena, trying to taunt Maximus into doing something stupid, which Maximus doesn't take the bait. On their way out of the arena, Maximus is addressed by his old servant from the beginning of the movie named Cicero, who tells him that he is able to make contact with what was Maximus's portion of the army, and also gives him bits of his shrine to his family at the beginning of that he had at the beginning of the movie. Commodus is very upset by this. He is taking some advice from his friend in the Senate, who has agreed to who has like given him an analogy of this animal that like lets predators take bites of it so that they can lure it into a closer position. And so essentially he's going to take that approach with this steadily growing conspiracy against Commodus. Maximus eventually makes the call to contact his old army, who he believes will help. He meets again with Lucilla, who introduces him to Gracchus, who is her ally in the Senate, agrees to help him out, even though he brings up some very good points about why he shouldn't trust Maximus bringing an army into the city of Rome, because he'd basically be doing the same thing Julius Caesar did when he took over Rome. So, yeah, he's hoping, and yeah, he's just banking on doing the same thing, but hoping that Maximus shows a bit more commitment to republicanism than small r republicanism than Julius Caesar obviously did.
Right.
We get some conversation between Maximus and Proximo, where Proximo is like teased to like, will he side with Maximus? Will he side with Commodus? Either way, we don't know. But eventually, Proximo is going to agree to let Maximus do a little escape attempt, so he can make his way out of the city and get contact with his army. Commodus has Gracchus arrested shortly afterwards, and yeah, and we start getting the first of like our very creepy scenes where Commodus wants to molest his sister and make a new heir,
Mm-hmm.
which
Of pure blood.
oh yeah, I don't know that that's a thing, that's a concept yet. To be fair, I don't think we're a couple hundred years off from that, but yeah.
Well, the Egyptians did that.
Oh yeah, I suppose. Yep, you're right. Yeah, that was
I don't know that the Romans ever did.
um well, at this point the Egyptians are part of Rome, so
Yeah. Anyway, a strange idea.
yeah, I'm not sure that Max like Commodus would be sure up for it, but then again, I'm not that much of an expert.
Well, anyway, they're pretty much ticking off every box with Commodus to make us dislike him.
Yeah.
There's not much left, really, is there?
No. No, he's pretty evil.
Like we don't see him kick a dog or anything, but he might as well have.
I mean, he technically gets tigers murdered every day.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
It's like, I don't need to kick a dog. I own a pound. So they do Maximus does the escape attempt. The gladiators are meant to fight off some of the praetors, while Maximus escapes Proximo's compound. Proximo is killed by the praetors, and Maximus makes his way to meet with Cicero, who is sitting on top of a horse with a noose around his neck, and ends up getting killed when the horse runs away, and Maximus is apprehended. Commodus is going to separate Lucius from Lucilla for the most part, and is essentially going to take Lucius on Lucian. I'm gonna look this up. I gotta get this right. I'm pronouncing it both ways. Lucius. Take Lucius directly under his wing, so that he has total control, and so that he demands Lucilla's loyalty, and on the condition that Lucilla provides Commodus an heir. Commodus aims to kill Maximus in front of everybody, so he is going to kill him in the middle of the arena. This does has some historical precedent, because Commodus, like I said, he was a very athletic guy, and he did enjoy fighting in the arena. So,
Mm-hmm.
and he also rigged most of his matches so that he would never lose, because first of all, he's the emperor, he can't get himself killed in the arena. Second of all,
You will recall you will recall too there was that scene at the very towards the beginning where he was fighting he was practicing in surrounded by, right? So to prepare us for this moment.
he is demonstrated as being proficient in combat, even though they do everything in their characterization to make characterization of him to make him seem like the anti Maximus. Like they don't, which is a bit to the movie's detriment, I think. Like it doesn't allow Commodus to be like a physical threat, which, I mean, there's precedent for that in real life. He was one of one of the famous images of him is like him dressed up as Hercules. So I do also have an issue with like them kind of like making him like, forgive the term, but kind of like feminizing him, quote unquote, within like a very toxic definition of the word. Like he's always like crying and whatnot, whereas like Maximus, no, Maximus cries when his kid's murdered, but
Yeah.
Commodus is like constantly in tears over every little thing. He doesn't act within quote unquote traditional male archetype, but yeah, it's mildly weird, especially like when he was.
It's just like he spends a lot of time thinking about himself and about, is he happy? Is he not happy? Why is he not happy? He just needs to be busier.
And again, that's not like true to like his historical counterpart, who was a frat boy
Hmm.
essentially. And yeah, so he is going to fight Maximus in the arena, and he to do this, he stabs Maximus beforehand, possibly poisoning him. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
He could also be suffering from blood loss. That is also possible. But he has Maximus's armor put on over top of his wound so that it doesn't appear that way to the guests. And they have a little bit of a sword fight, which is somewhat even, pretty even, could be more even. But they eventually manage to disarm each other, and Maximus ends up turning a blade that Commodus produces from his sleeve back into Commodus's chest, killing Commodus in plain view of everyone.
And don't forget, I was just going to say, and don't forget that when Commodus requests a sword from the soldiers present, they refuse. So they've had enough.
Yeah, he's requested when he loses his sword, he requests a sword from his the guards surrounding the area and forming like the battle ring. But Commodus's friend from the Senate uh
Quirinus.
actually, what was it? Sorry.
Oh no, sorry, I was thinking of Quirinus, but he was Maximus's old friend. You're thinking, or you mean Gracchus? Or no,
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 this
I know
one's
who
not
you mean.
Grax.
Uh, Gaius.
Gaius? Yeah, Gaius. I was forgetting his name, I think. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's Gaius. I'm looking at the actor. Yeah, Gaius refuses to, probably because he wants to see how this turns out. And like, I don't know if he
Mm-hmm.
really wants, or if he really needs Commodus to be in charge. And so they refuse, and that allows them to finish off the fight more or less fairly.
Yes.
Maximus has a moment where he hallucinates that he's at the gates to his farm and is symbolically symbolizing him meeting back up with his dead family. Before he loses consciousness, he requests that his friends be freed, his gladiator friends be freed, and also Gracchus, who's been arrested and imprisoned. So he
Right.
has them be freed, and he informs the Gaius of Marcus Aurelius's last wishes before he falls unconscious and dies. And Lucilla, I suppose, in theory, acting as like a sort of regent, passes power to the Senate. Within the logic of this movie, passing the power of Rome back to the Senate, which didn't happen in real life. And to close out the movie, Maximus's friend Juba buries him and goes back and is going to use his freedom to go back home and find his family. So yeah, that's
Mm-hmm.
the end of the movie.
Mm-hmm. So, so did you know, Kyle, that they have been wanting to make a Gladiator 2 for quite a while?
Why? Why? I have questions. Why?
Well, that's my question too, and well, because it was a very popular movie, and they've been trying to come up with well, it's a blockbuster. Did it very well at the box office by your standards, right?
Yeah, I think it's like it was something like at least like fourth in the box office that year.
Mm-hmm.
It did pretty
Mm-hmm.
well. It was in top 10.
So yeah, they would like to do a sequel. They would like it to be about Lucius, grown up,
Yeah.
and who discovers that Maximus was his real father. And Russell Crowe would be interested in doing it, but he'd have to have he'd be in the afterlife, or maybe he could be in flashbacks. I'm not sure, but they haven't been able to come up with the script. So maybe you and I should sit down and write one and send it off to
Uh
Ridley Scott.
I don't know. I don't know. Treat Clark is still around. He's the actor that plays Lucius. He's in his 30s now, so he could pull that off.
Oh, he'd be perfect.
Oh yeah, he more or less could look the part. I think what's his most recent thing? Oh, he was in Glass. I think he maybe plays Bruce Willis's kid in Glass.
Oh, okay.
Oh yeah, no, he's the
So the
kid.
only
He's the kid from Breakable Glass.
oh, okay.
He's Bruce Willis's kid in those movies.
So the only thing is they couldn't call it Gladiator because he wouldn't be a gladiator. So how would it
Yeah,
be Gladiator 2? I actually thought what they should do is they should do one a prequel called Maximus and write about Maximus before. But they'd have to use another actor, somebody younger.
I don't
Or not.
know. I don't. Yeah, I obviously just don't have a lot of interest in the prospect of a Gladiator franchise.
No, no. But would you go? If there was another movie, would you go?
Uh,
It'd be hard not to go, wouldn't it, Kyle?
I don't know. Maybe I don't have like the same like distrust of Ridley Scott that I do of other directors, so maybe. Although
Yeah.
Ridley Scott's I think Ridley Scott's other historical movies I don't think have been all that good. This is the peak of them.
Okay, he did have historians to work on this film because he wanted to be historically accurate, but I obviously things got out of control and they went quite far from history. And several of the historians that he'd initially hired said they didn't really want their names mentioned in association with the movie. That would be just fine.
His other ones have been like Kingdom of Heaven, which has similar
Oh yeah.
problems to this. He did
Hmm.
a Robin Hood movie, which I did not like. I saw that. That was just
Was that the Russell Crowe one?
I think so. I think it was also Russell
Yeah.
Crowe. Yeah, it was. Oh, I did not like that movie.
Hmm.
No. He did Black Hawk Down, which is all right.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't mind that. But before this, he did what's it called? Uh Filmography. It's a 92 movie. He before this he did 1492 Conquest of Paradise, which is
Oh boy.
like an abomination. Mostly because any picture that doesn't like portray Christopher it's about Christopher Columbus and you can't talk about Christopher Columbus without saying he's a monster. So, yeah, so that's not great. And this is also like this is a he's always been good for like at the very least dressing. We also did the Exodus Gods and Kings movie. That was another I suppose historical one, depending on how you want to, depending on your point of view. But yeah, I haven't seen that. American
No, I didn't. I
Gangster, he
didn't. I
did.
don't know if I've even heard of it. Oh, that's
Um,
that's a good movie.
it's pretty new.
That's
Yeah, it's
also
the new
Russell
one.
Crowe, though, right?
It's just all of them are just Russell Crowe. Oh, he's also in his movie American Gangster. I guess he has a favorite actor.
I guess he does.
Yeah, that must be something. Just being like directly paying your favorite actor.
He didn't do Master and Commander, did he? Ridley Scott?
It's not on here. No, I'm looking at his
Okay.
filmography right now. I don't know. I'd say I wish he did more sci-fi, but I haven't liked his like recent sci-fi all that much. Like I didn't care for Alien Covenant or Prometheus. I'm not a terribly big fan of The Martian, but I understand that others like it. Yeah.
I thought it was okay.
Yeah, no, I just couldn't get into I just could never get into the mindset that like the guy in The Martian was in like real danger or was going to die cuz like I mean Sean Bean's in the movie and if Sean Bean's safe, that means everyone is.
Right. That's the one with Matt Damon, right?
Yeah, I think
Is that the one
so.
you're talking about? Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
hear that the book is excellent. So I think I will read the book and see. Then I'll make a judgment.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I've talked about like historical accuracy, anything else I'm missing? No, I think that's about it. What do you give the movie, Maureen? You get to go first because you're not me.
Okay. Well, I was trying to think how I would score this movie. I do find it entertaining, and I do there are even moments when it gives me a chill. So I can't discount it. But what I thought I'd do is I'd start with the 10, and then I would take away points for the things that I thought really suffered. And so I'm giving it like I'm taking away a point for script. I'm taking away a point for the way that it is presented history. I'm taking away a point for Commodus because I just think he's not a great character. And I'm taking away a point for the line "honor him" at the end, which I thought was. Um, I bet you they really wondered about how to end it, and that was the best they could do. But I'm
Mhm.
going to give back a point for the "not yet" line because I thought that was so well done with Juba and the relationship between Juba and
Oh yeah.
Maximus. So I'm going to give it. So I'm going to give it a 7.
Okay. Yeah. I wish Juba had been in the movie a bit more. He was a pretty good character. I thought he was interesting.
Well,
I
yeah,
think the movie could have.
yeah,
I think the movie could have benefited from more Juba. The movie doesn't, and like that would have like maybe forced the movie to dwell more on the reality of being a gladiator and being a slave, which I think
yeah,
like
yeah.
having Juba being a central figure would have been pretty much would have been pretty good for that.
Hmm.
But yeah, like I think I barely mentioned him in my summary, but I think like his scene at the end where like he's just like, "We'll meet again, old friend," but not let yet, and then it like pans over to the Mediterranean Sea, and like you can tell like without him directly saying that he's going to go find his family again, and
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
the sequel I want. I want Juba to
Hmm.
go find his family. I
Yeah.
think I him to
There
be
we
in
go.
charge. I don't know. Is he still around?
And then it could be Gladiator too.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, what are you going to give it, Kyle?
I'm just gonna find what's finding Jimon's most recent movie so I can get this. Oh, he's in. I think he was in Captain. Oh yeah, he's still around. He was in. I think he might be the one guard from Guardians of the Galaxy.
Oh,
Uh, yeah, no, he's in like that. He's in like yeah, I think he plays that one guard in Guardian of the Galaxy. And he's like in Captain Marvel. He was in Legend of Tarzan, which is a good movie. You know, I like him. I think he should be in more stuff. Oh God, did he play Shazam? I'm interested in this guy. Cast. Sorry, I gotta find this out. Oh shit, yeah, I think he plays the wizard Shazam in Shazam. Oh yeah, I like this guy. Yeah, no, I want this guy. Yeah, that's what I want. If it stars Jimon Honsu, I'll watch Gladiator too.
okay.
Um, yeah. So there we go. Found it. I'm giving it a 5.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's harsh.
I'm like I don't feel strongly about it. Like a lot of what it's good about it is like stuff I could like the action scenes and like pure primal, oh, this guy's so awesome, not so much like amazing storytelling and whatnot. Again, it's a pretty normal fantasy plot when you get down to it. It's not like this amazing setup for like this Oscar Best Picture generational film, which it claims to be. Yeah, so yeah, it's harsh, but it's really just kind of like taken like made me look at the Academy in like a whole different light because like this isn't something incredibly special. I think when you get down to it.
No. No, if I'm gonna watch a show about Rome, I'll watch the miniseries Rome. Have you watched it?
No, I've seen reviews of it. I can't remember of it. I'll probably watch Spartacus or something.
Oh my. Oh, well no, watch Rome. It's really good. It's a
Hmm.
two season. Man, it takes you through Roman history and it's quite interesting and informative.
I think the last big Roman documentary I watched was actually Barbarians Rising, which I think is a good documentary. And it kind of like central figure like features the so-called barbarians that Rome was always fighting. So you get a bit of a glimpse of that. So like you go through like they'll do an episode on like Boudica, an episode on Spartacus, an episode on Attila and the Goths and whatnot. So that's pretty interesting. Yeah, I think that's about it. Do we have any other points?
Nope.
All right. Well, I think that's the episode. Maureen, why don't you tell them where they can find find your books and find like your social media if you have it for like your writing parts. Yeah.
Okay. Well, they can find me on my website, maureenulrich.ca, and my books are on Amazon. You should look under my name, though, because unfortunately there are lots of books that are called Power Plays, Face Off, and Breakaway, so it would take you a while to find them. But the book's available in paperback, on Kindle, on Kobo, and you can find me on Facebook, Maureen Ulrich Writes. You can find me on Twitter as Maureen Ulrich, Instagram. I'm kind of around.
And again, you can find the podcast at Kyle and Cody's called Cinema Cast on Facebook, the Twitter at KC Cinema Pod, the YouTube at Kyle and Cody's called Cinema Cast, my personal Twitter at Lord Brokenshire at Twitter, and yeah, I think next week Victoria's hopefully going to be back on the show. And then we're getting really close to the 20th episode. So,
Wow.
or of the season, I should say it. It's
Oh,
episode
okay.
45 in total.
Wow. Congratulations.
Yeah, yeah. So we're getting there. Yeah, we're clicking along. So yeah, see you guys next week.